When Buhari signed the Electoral Act 2022 into law, Nigerians rejoiced. I rejoiced. In fact, I rejoiced so much that I made a video about it. Because the Electoral Act 2022 contained innovations that were to make Nigeria's election to be violence and crisis-free. In fact, litigation-free. The provisions were there. But fast forward, just a little over a year after, you have the tribunal judgment that was released, that was given. And then you ask yourself, what just happened to the Electoral Act 2022? What happened to it? What did the tribunal judges, what did the judiciary do to the Electoral Act 2022? All the corrections that were made, all the innovations that were brought in, that were put in to make elections free, fair, and credible in Nigeria. What happened to them? Did the justices or the judges of the tribunal in Peter Obi's petitions against INEC, against Tinubu, and against APC, did they do justice to the Electoral Act? My name is Benedict Olomu. Follow me on this journey to take a look at the big picture to realize exactly what the judiciary did to the Electoral Act 2022. It is sufficient to say that the judiciary, or more particularly, the tribunal judges, just nailed the Electoral Act 2022 to the cross. They nailed it. They crucified it. They decapitated it. They made nonsense of it. Why do I say this? The Electoral Act 2022, of all the things that were brought in, was done or was enacted to correct ballot box snatching, to correct electoral violence, to correct results forgery. That was at the heart, at the core of the Electoral Act 2022. So the issue of election results or polling units transmission, whether real time or not, it doesn't even have to be real time, because if you look at the specification of the Electoral Act, it doesn't even have to be in real time. I'm talking about the transmission of the polling unit results now, the forms EC8A, to the location, the registration area collation center, where you come up with the form EC8B. The transmission from there, right, does not necessarily need to be real time. It can be delayed. It can be staggered, but under a condition, which INEC came to also corroborate. And by the way, don't forget the fact that it was INEC themselves, through Festus Okoye and through Mahmood Yakubu, that came out to tell us that they would transmit the election results real time from the polling unit, even though the Electoral Act did not expressly indicate that. But there was an indication that was in the Electoral Act that made it mandatory, and INEC corroborated this, for the polling unit result to be transmitted on the IREV, whether in real time or otherwise. But so far as there has to be a collation at the next level, which is the registration area collation center. For that collation to take place, the guidelines of INEC makes it mandatory that the INEC collation officer would look at the form EC8A that the returning officer, is it returning officer now? The INEC official at the polling unit, I've forgotten the name now, please remind me. That form EC8A that the INEC SPO, presiding officer, polling unit officer, yeah, that's the word. The polling unit officer, the INEC polling unit officer, yes, the form EC8A that the INEC polling unit officer will bring to the registration area collation center, which is the ward level collation center. That INEC ward level collation officer will cite the form EC8A that the INEC polling unit officer brings to that collation center. He will compare it if there is any discrepancies from any of the political parties' agent, he will compare that with the IREV copy to authenticate that, oh, the one that the polling unit officer brought has not been tampered with. If there is any discrepancy, he will compare it with the IREV copy. And after that is done, if there's still any discrepancy, you now compare with that of the police and otherwise. This was done with the intention to prevent ballot box snatching, to prevent polling unit result manipulation, tipexing, and forgery. That was the whole essence of having the Electoral Act 2022. That was why I rejoiced when that Electoral Act bill was signed into law. That was why Nigerians rejoiced. And that is why I am pained to my heart, to my bones right now, that the same Electoral Act has been thrown out of the window by the judiciary, particularly by the Election Petitions Tribunal. And our highly reverend justices did this in broad daylight. They killed the Electoral Act 2022. They killed it. And it's a shame that they did it even without showing their face. When people do such live broadcast of, look at what happened during the Madu's live broadcast of judgment. It was the judge's face that was being shown. Why was it different in our own case? Perhaps so that they can hide their faces, but we know their faces. So what was the intention of hiding their faces? The judiciary must redeem whatever reputation is left of them. They must. Because like I said earlier, sovereignty rests ultimately with the people. You are only a representative of the people. You are empowered by the Constitution of Nigeria to represent the people. Whether you are in the judiciary, in the legislature, or in the executives, you are only a representative of the people. Ultimate sovereignty, ultimate power rests within the people. And with these your actions, that is so glaring to all, except to the sycophants that are benefiting from this corrupt system, with this your action, you are pushing the people to the wall. And they will react. They will react. And when they react, at the end of the day, it will be the people who are pulling the strings behind the scenes. The elite group of people in the IMF, in the US-led West, behind the IMF and the World Bank, they will be the people that will benefit. Don't join hands with the enemies of Nigeria to ruin Nigeria. The judiciary must rise up and pick up the pieces of the remnants of the reputation of the judiciary. We are not dumb in Nigeria. The law is explicit. The Constitution is written in plain English for all to understand. We cannot have you, who are supposed to be reverent, hallowed, and incorrigible. We cannot have you do this to the Electoral Act, to the Constitution, and to the sovereignty of Nigeria. You must make a U-turn immediately. Because what you effectively did is kill the Electoral Act 2022. You are saying open sesame to all those who want to rig elections in the future. Because where is the correction? You cannot gang up against Nigeria. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the judiciary, the legislature, or the executives have people that come together and agree and enact policies that are anti-people. It doesn't make it legitimate, because ultimately, legitimacy rests with the Nigerian people.